Podcast with Zach Meisel and T.J. Zuppi.
Fly ball, deep right field. Back is Spencer at the one and two, get the wall. It's gone!
Subscribe to Selby is Godcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Unbelievable.
Oh boy, the joys of doing this live. We'll do it live. And I never know if we're actually up and running. People can hear us. Anybody want to be a producer for this show? Call out. Yeah, anybody want to just take this off my hands?
Well, yeah, because our summer intern is leaving soon, right?
That's right. Yeah, back to school. Whew. This show is always 1 second away from disaster, and it felt like yesterday was about 1 millisecond away from disaster. And thankfully, we say it a lot. Thank God Clase is always one ground ball away from escaping the world crumbling. Could have been, Zach, what I thought would have been the worst loss of the season. If somehow that would have escaped their grasp, and not just, not in how they played, but just the implications of what it meant to come back and split this series in Minnesota, for the way this team had just dropped 7 in a row, to fight back and be in position to not lose any ground, at least in terms of where the series started in the American League Central Division between you and the Twins. And to lose that game, that would have been pure disaster, but they didn't. Clase got the ground ball, the double play. They avoided what could have been me screaming for hours about Fry laying down sacrifice bunts in the top of the 9th inning, and they found a way to split. Zach, you were there. You were on the scene in Minnesota. What was the mood after that win?
The mood of the players, the mood of the media, the mood of the fans.
Everything. Everything.
Yeah, I mean, it was, first of all, I loved Andres Jimenez said he knows whenever Clase pitches, he gets, quote, extra work because, it's so common for a hitter to make contact with one of those 102 mile an hour cutters and pound it into the ground. And there was earlier in that at bat, there was a foul ball from Larnach, and Jimenez and Rocchio kind of like mimicked a double play, even though the ball was out of play and they weren't involved in it. But Jimenez said to Rocchio, like, be prepared. We're going to get one here. And they did. And that game, I've seen that game. I've seen that finish like 100 times. Tell me, if you've seen this, you've been there at Comerica Park circa, I don't know, 2016. Felt like it was always against the Tigers, always in Detroit. And it would be same deal. 5-1 game. Shaw comes in, gives up a couple runs. It's 5-3. Cody Allen comes on in the 9th. It's a Sunday afternoon. We're all just wishing the game would speed up so we could stop at Slow's Barbecue on the way home. And next thing you know, the bases are loaded. There's nobody out. Miguel Cabrera's coming to the plate, hypnotized by Notorious B.I.G.'s playing. Tigers fans are going nuts, and you're like, how the hell is he going to get out of this? And he does. And it's not pretty, and it makes everybody's blood pressure rise, whether you're a player, a coach, a media member who's like, what am I supposed to write about this? I had 2 stories going yesterday, very different themes. And they shut the door. And you're right. I mean, you lose that game, I don't know how you recover from that. I don't know how you come back. Just all the buildup, knowing that was the Twins' best shot of the season to make up some major ground in the division, and they didn't do it. But if they win that game, if they pull that out, that's a 2-game swing, and they've got so much momentum, and it's natural to think about, where did that huge division lead go? And just everything you went through the entire week. And now you can just breathe. You can exhale.
I don't want to give them too much credit because they did just lose 7 in a row. And I'm not too far removed from feeling just the worst feelings about the direction of this club. So I'll keep that in the back of my mind.
This is what you talk about, though. You always say, like, it's that.
Right.
Against Baltimore, they won the first 2 and lost the next 2, and it was like, here they lose the first 2, they win the last 2, and it's like, ooh.
I feel like a dumb person because I let whatever I see, the last thing I see, dictate how I feel. And the order of things matters. It really does. If they had started the season terribly and then just been on an incredible tear for the last 2 months to get where they're at, like if it's just reversed, kind of playing meh at the beginning and then really amazing up to now, wouldn't we feel so much differently about this club? I know part of it would be based on what's the rotation look like, and a lot of the elements that we feel is more deeply rooted than just what we have seen in the last few days. But yeah, I don't know. We're human beings. We still let that bias of the most recent thing that we have witnessed impact how we feel about things, and it's unavoidable.
I'm going to try to make an analogy here, and this is on the fly, so I don't know if this is going to work. It's almost like you're a chef, and you're cooking something, and you've got all these ingredients, and you're just producing dish after dish, and it's delicious. The ingredients are working. And as your year goes on, you're not going to make your perfect dish every night, right? But now the dishes are not great, and you're wondering, like, okay, well, overall, I've had a really good year. Like, I'm in the running for the James Beard Award or something. I think that's the thing. And so if you look at the whole picture here, it's like, I've had a really good year of cooking. If you look at the last 2 weeks, it's like, man, my customers think that this place sucks. And but you're wondering, like, okay, well, to truly evaluate how the last few months of the year are going, I got to look at the ingredients, because that's the key. Are the ingredients going to set me up, or am I help me out here? I'm losing steam here with this analogy. Point is, it's there are ways you can look at their record, and they're 69-49, and there's basically like 5 teams that are all essentially tied with the best record in baseball, which is insane. This is a very strange season. And you can look at that and you can say, okay, well, like, they were awesome for 4 months, and it's been a little rough here the last month, 6 weeks. But how do you predict the future? That's the key. What are the ingredients you have right now? Because that's going to determine what you're about to make. If you don't have that ingredient of the Shane, you don't have a dash of Shane Bieber, right? So what he did in his 2 starts in March and April don't matter. You don't have David Fry, otherworldly nuclear bat. Like, that ingredient is not the same anymore. You're at the bottom of the David Fry spice bottle, and it's just not quite as good. It's older, and it's I don't know. Can I move on from this analogy?
You found an element, though. Somewhere hidden at the bottom of that was a little bit of good spice yesterday, by the way.
Well, until he bunted. And then, so the point is, it's 162 games. You're going to be a different team at various points in the season. And the question is, can you be a good enough team for the next 6 weeks to not just get to the playoffs? Because you know me, there's nothing I hate more than the just get in and anything can happen. Because I think that's BS. I mean, it proves true sometimes, but so does just being a really good team and winning baseball games. The Orioles are very different now than they were at points in April and May. The Phillies went through a really brutal stretch recently. The Yankees had a terrible, I think it was June. So teams go through these stretches. It's just, do you have enough talent and ability and the right winning formula, the recipe there, see, to get back on track? And I think that's, they proved some things the last 2 days, not just by winning, but how they won. We know what the formula is. And the big thing, you got great starts from Gavin Williams and Tanner Bibee. And that's why it's, everyone Friday night was saying, the sky is falling. This team isn't good. This team was never good. This is reality. Meanwhile, they still had like the best record in the American League and whatever. And look, I get it. Like, if you want to be frustrated with a 7-game losing streak, be frustrated. But also understand context. And this team still has a chance to do what it wants to do. It just needs to play the way it played the last 2 days more than the way they played the 7 days before that.
Well, let me finish my thought, because as I was saying,
Sorry.
I didn't I don't
had
want
to
to
get
give
that
them
analogy in there.
too much credit. I mean, if you're on the mat, you're on the mat for a reason. But I will give you credit for getting back up off the mat. And I think we've all said how they respond to adversity is important. We knew how a Terry Francona club would respond to adversity, usually pretty well. We didn't know how Stephen Vogt would handle it. In fact, we saw that first, I'm going to get ejected just to spice things up. There you go. Just to maybe fire up the troops a little bit from Stephen Vogt. Do you think that was what he was doing? Was he really that upset about a balk, or was he trying to ignite his group a little bit?
He said it wasn't premeditated. I also think once he goes out there, that situation, the state of the team, there was no way he was going back to that dugout to manage. He said that he's got 3 kids, and his 2 oldest were like mocking him. They were pretending they were him, yelling F-bombs. And then his youngest kid was scared. He had never seen his dad be that mad.
I wish that were the case around here. My kids would be like, "Why'd you go easy on the umpire? Why'd you you didn't let him have it, truly." But for whatever reason, I don't know if that really plays a factor in the next 2 games. Probably not, but I do want to give them credit because it showed a lot of resolve to be able to bounce back for what could have been a really deadly blow. Losing 7 in a row, the Twins have all the reason to feel great in this series, and they looked it. I mean, they look like a bunch that was just having a hell of a time and playing with nothing to lose. Whereas the Guardians seemed like the team that were playing with their backs against the wall, and they were having unforced errors. And how many times did they make really sort of boneheaded decisions or bad defensive plays, getting away from what makes this team truly what it has been? And it's great defense, and it's stealing bases and being aggressive. And we were seeing the Twins stealing bases or being aggressive on the bases, whereas the Guardians were making critical mistakes in the field, whether it was physical errors or mental mistakes. We even go the Cobb start. It felt like he was behind the 8 ball so many times early in that. And I'm thinking Cobb has to be thinking to himself, wait a minute, I thought I came here to a group that is going to play good infield defense behind me, but it wasn't always great in that start. And I want to talk just about his start in particular coming up. Got an idea for a little bit of a game, if you want to call it that. But for all that could have gone wrong and did go wrong, to be able to come back and win the next 2 in this series, man, that's massive. And on some ways, I don't want to overstate it because it'd be nice to be growing the lead instead of just trying to hold on by the skin of your teeth to the lead in the division. But the beauty in it here is this helps them take the season series too from the Twins. Am I right? So there you just added another game on top of, trying to maintain where you're at in this division. And so I, again, don't want to give them too much credit because it would have been nice if they just didn't lose 7 in a row and it didn't feel like their backs were against the wall, but they were, and they found a way to recover. So I give them credit for that.
And I don't want to make excuses for them because, again, they've played very average baseball for over a month. But you keep mentioning the 7 straight losses, but okay, their last 14 games, they're 7-7. Like, where do the arbitrary endpoints end?
Usually at losing
if
streaks.
We're only
that's
focusing
what I
on the 7-game losing streak, can we focus on the 5-game winning streak before that?
No.
Right.
You know the rules. No, absolutely not.
So, I mean, it just depends on what you want the snapshot to be. We could zoom out and say, well, they're 69-49, and if you would have said that at the beginning of the year, you would have signed up for that in a heartbeat. Especially when you learn that it's percentage points behind the best record in baseball. So that's why I'm trying to look forward more than back. And it's just a matter of how often they can play the brand they need to play. We saw it the last 2 days. And you know who appeared in those games the last 2 days? Cade Smith, Hunter Gaddis, and Emmanuel Clase. That's the key. And you can play that way more when you get innings out of your starting pitchers. When you get 3 2/3 from Carlos Carrasco or Joey Cantillo or Xavier Curry or Logan Allen or Tristan McKenzie, then you're going to have to use a lot of relievers to cover the end or punt with Avila and Curry or Strzelecki or Gillespie or whoever. There are going to be so many great random jersey sightings or random Cleveland player of the day in the future from this season. Anyway,
What season
the
isn't
formula
there?
is get enough offense, get 5 or 6 innings out of your starter, and lean on that bullpen. But you can't do that every single day. But you can do it most days if you're not burning those guys in games you don't need to burn them. So it's the most critical development to me was Williams gave you 6 awesome, efficient innings. Tanner Bibee, after a layoff, gave you 5 and 2/3 really good innings. And those are your horses here. Those, it's going to be interesting. You've got Lively, Boyd, and Cobb going against the Cubs. And Lively's been really consistent. We don't really know Cobb or Boyd yet. You hope that they'll give you more than
God, just say that out loud again.
I know.
Here it goes. Imagine telling yourself. Tell yourself that in
Right.
spring training, tell yourself what the date would be, what the record would be, and what the rotation would look like entering this series against the Cubs.
Yeah, and I mean, you get to the playoffs and you know you're going to have Bibee and Williams, and then you hope those other guys can cover the rest of the rotation. But I think for the next 7 weeks, you should win. You should get a quality start whenever Bibee and Williams pitch. And then whatever the
hope,
rest
yeah.
of the guys give you, that's gravy.
But again, with Gavin Williams, and we'll get to Gavin coming up, that's also a little bit of recency bias because if you go back one previous start, we were
Sure.
thinking, is this guy worthy of a playoff start? Yes, because you don't have a choice, but if you had a choice, you probably wouldn't put him in that position right now.
But again, I'm looking ahead. I'm not thinking
Okay.
about behind.
Okay, all right.
I'm
Well,
saying what needs to happen, not what has happened.
humor me for a minute because I want to look behind us for another brief few minutes, and then I want to look ahead with the game I have in mind. A little bit of word association, 10 different players or elements that I want to get your take on. But let's look back just in the finale in Minnesota because I found this one fun to follow, just the ebbs and flows of the game. Or Sarah Langs would say, you're looking at the win probability chart, it'd be a fun ride. For this team, they load the bases in the 4th inning. They had just tied the game courtesy of Jose Ramirez, and they don't get anything else. But what is fun and what is cool when we get to look back on the old games, we go review games, we know what happens, so we get the benefit of looking back and knowing how something might have impacted the future. The fact that they got Minnesota starter out of the game and into the bullpen right then and there felt important for what eventually came. And of course, this offense broke out, but just the sequence between the Guardians just exploding later in the game after they had gone to lefty and Thielbar, but that had just come moments after Minnesota had blown a chance of their own. And how fitting, because this entire series for Minnesota was what ended up being a blown chance for them to make up ground in this division. And it felt like they were a freight train coming for that lead. But Vasquez's home run, nope, not a home run by that much. And he ends up getting stranded there, and then the Guardians come back in the 6th inning and blow things open. What a shift of emotions between the 4th inning, the Guardians not coming through, the Twins getting their chance later in the 5th, and then the Guardians finally breaking through in the 6th inning.
Didn't it feel like a playoff game? Did it have that intensity watching it?
I don't know if I would go that far, but
Okay.
But it certainly felt like two evenly matched opponents in this particular sequence of
that
events.
Minnesota lineup. We saw a glimpse of it. I mean, I know they don't have Carlos Correa right now. It's still deep, scary. And I would say that that's not one I'd want to run into in the postseason, but also like Buxton and Royce Lewis could be hurt by then. So I don't know. But they can mash. Wallner's been unbelievable. Willie Castro was an all-star. Jose Miranda can hit. So that's tough. And that's why it's interesting. They've done such a good job of picking spots within the opposing lineup to use various relievers based on leverage. You'll see like Barlow face the bottom of the order, and then Cade Smith or Gaddis face the top. But there's not really anywhere you can rest when you face the Twins. Even, I mean, Vasquez had 3 hits on
Yeah.
Sunday and crushed every ball.
And the shocking thing is, I mean, the pitching wasn't always great. And throughout the 7-game losing streak, there was an element of falling behind almost pretty much in every game. And then every time this Guardians offense would find a way to fight back, the shutdown innings never happened in a great number of them. And that contributed to the losing streak.
Kwan's home run, the leadoff homer on Saturday, was the first time the Guardians had a lead at the end of an inning since Monday. 39 innings.
God,
So
that
I mean,
felt
they
that
went
way.
nuts when he hit it, and even Vogt said it was like a pressure valve released because they say all the right things. You know, this team has embodied the one day at a time attitude. I do think they believe in it. You know, they like to be cliche because it's helped them, but you cannot deny that was weighing on them. I mean, Austin Hedges after the game Friday night, when the losing streak was 7, and he is usually, I mean, he is the leader of leaders. He is as much a member of the coaching staff as he is the playing roster. And he sat at his locker and stared into oblivion for like 10 minutes. And it was like he was processing everything that had happened, trying to decode how to snap out of this, how to lead his team through this. I mean, I've not seen that. You know, usually it's quiet, but everyone goes about their business. And again, like, you got a game tomorrow, one day at a time. And that was the first time this season where I felt like, you know what, they're cognizant, like they're aware of their recent history, their surroundings, because they usually have such good tunnel vision. And it's, you know, even like Kwan was like, yeah, he said like we've lost 7 in a row, but you know, we won 5 in a row before that. So all of this talk about the season slipping away or, you know, anything like that is anything you want to say about the 7-game losing streak. He said it was a narrative because they take it day by day, and if they win tomorrow, it's in the rear view.
Sure. I mean, can't two things be capable of being true simultaneously? It's a big deal that they lost 7 in a row.
It's
But
interesting
but
to
that's
me
the attitude that you're talking about is the one they have to be able to emerge from a losing streak like that.
Yes, but you never know how long it's going to last. Like they all said, well, you know, I think David Fry said we won so much early and we never went through adversity, which you could also argue that too with the Bieber injury. But how do you know when it's adversity? Is a 3-game losing streak adversity?
When we say it, when we panic on this
5,
show.
7? What if we're talking about a 9-game losing streak
Ask-
and a virtual tie in first place?
The Discord knows when it's adversity. Shout out to you guys. Shout out to Caden as well, who's watching along on the live stream here. Thank you for being here. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat. We'll certainly talk about it. Caden says, yo, go Tribe. I think the rotation will take a turn. You have to hope that they will. And there's so much unknown here with Cobb, with Boyd coming up. We really don't know. But let's talk about some of these names. Let's play a little word association. I want to get your temperature on a number of different players where we're at. It's a perfect chance for us to repackage the same thing that everyone else is talking about, but pretend we're doing it new. I've got the first name for you. Gavin Williams. What's the first word or phrase that comes to mind?
Horse. That it? You want me to elaborate?
I would love if you elaborated. Or we could just do it 10 in a row and say goodbye to everybody.
I think he only threw 73 pitches in those 6 innings, and he certainly could have gone deeper. But I understand the pull because you don't want to leave him in too long. Let him face guys 3rd, 4th time. And Cade Smith and Hunter Gaddis are sitting out there like, hello, we're here. I mean, he did that the night before with Cobb. I think he left him in a batter too long. And then he got Cade Smith after Wallner had already given the Twins the lead. So, but I say horse because and look, it was one start. And he didn't even have his best swing and miss stuff. He said he didn't have a great feel for the curveball. He's still figuring it out. But we've said it. The hope is that guy can be a workhorse for you in parts of the schedule when everybody else is tired and they're feeling stuff. Bibee was just dealing with shoulder soreness or a strain or whatever. And every position player like Stephen Kwan is banged up. Josh Naylor's banged up. David Fry's got a big wrap around his elbow after every game. Gavin Williams is fresh. So let him be your horse for the next 2 months. And if he had to throw 73 pitches so that 5 days from now he can throw 103, let that be the way it works. But I still think that's the key. Him and Bibee have to anchor this rotation, and credit to them for rising. I mean, that's a lot of pressure as the starting pitcher too. Your team's lost 7 in a row. The offense is going through it, facing a really good lineup on the road. Saturday night, Twins had their Hall of Fame inductions. There were like 21 Twins Hall of Famers there.
Can we talk about that for a minute? What the hell was that?
Sure.
Because
that's
did anybody know?
The team got thrown off.
Did
His
anybody
first pitch
know?
was like 45 minutes late.
What in the heck? Like the broadcast didn't know. The MLB app didn't know. It just said on-field ceremony delay. So if you're just watching via the app, you're thinking, what in the world could they be doing? Do they understand that they can schedule this so that the game actually occurs when it's supposed to occur? The Guardians, to their credit, they do this all the time with their ceremonies. They find a way to get the game started on time. What in the heck is happening in Minnesota?
I think Terry Ryan just listed every player he ever drafted.
Ridiculous. All right, my word. Do I get to do this too? Because it's not really an instant reaction when I come up with a name, is it? Well, whatever. I said heroic. Because for this team to get 6 innings out of a starting pitcher feels like the meme that I tweeted with Tony Stark at the end of Endgame with Pepper saying, "You can rest now."
Get that.
That's how incredible it is for this team to get a pitcher that gets them through 6 innings. Even Bibee, it's not really his fault. I know they were being cautious with him. First start back after this little brief hiatus, so you're not going to push him the way that you normally would. If this is a typical Bibee start, he's probably giving you more than 5 2/3 innings. But for what? Again, the implications of your 7-game losing streak, the fact that they can't get a starter to get them through 6 innings, and to have the outing that Gavin Williams did, and it wasn't the typical Williams start. It wasn't a ton of strikeouts, and there was some hard contact at times. I don't care. 6 innings is absolutely heroic to get that from Gavin Williams, and it makes me feel better just about the capability of him pitching like the guy that we know he can be, even if the stuff is not as good as it was last year for whatever reason, because he is coming back and he hasn't been able to build into this season the way that he normally would, or whatever reason. It's still in there, and this is a good lineup that he kept down for those 6 innings. I say it's absolutely heroic. Let's move on to number 2, Lane Thomas.
Just one word? Can it be multiple words?
Word or phrase? That's a word or phrase. How many hyphens are you going to use?
I would say back off.
Back off.
And I mean that from the standpoint of the manager.
I thought maybe like the criticism, back off the criticism.
No, it's tough. I mean, even Vogt admitted, like, you come to a new team, nobody knows how you operate. Like, what do you, if you're a hitting coach, Lane Thomas is brand new. He's 5 for 42 since joining the Guardians, I believe.
Yeah, 362 OPS.
Yeah, and you're still learning
Brutal.
like how to coach him. You don't know. And there's a lot of pressure in a new hitter wanting to impress with a new team. So I say back off, meaning put him in positions to succeed. And that's not hitting him second against right-handed pitching. Lane Thomas versus righties. This season, 207, 284, 332. Yikes. Versus lefties, 316, 395, 495. Hello. Yeah. You can't run away from him completely because you need him to be that guy he was last year when he hit 28 home runs, stole a bunch of bases, and was a really good all-around player. And, they traded some prospects that they liked or that had some value for him. Like, you can't just, that wasn't a trade just to get Brandon Guyer in here. So he should, I'm not saying he should be strictly platoon, but you got to put him in better positions to succeed. And that might be hard to do with the way that this roster is constructed. Maybe it means you have to get Manzardo up here or Valera or Brito or whatever. But I kind of feel bad for the guy. I don't feel like I think you need to ease him in more. Let him gain so much confidence against lefties and an occasional righty that fuels him maybe. Maybe it won't work. I don't know. But I don't think the way that they're deploying him right now is the best way to get him out of a slump. And he sat Sunday. So
He did, yeah.
Maybe that's part of this. And they're facing a lefty tonight, so that, go ahead, hit him second.
Yeah. And then he made his way into the game in the finale, which is kind of what we said. Even the games where he's on the bench, there is no reason why he can't play later in that game for whatever reason.
He should play 7 days a week, but
you like the arm, you like the speed. Yes, exactly. And I think, again, two things can be true here. He's not a 362 OPS, guys. He's better than he's been since he arrived in Cleveland. So I don't anticipate this is the guy that they got. And there's going to be some recency bias. Of course, we're all going to be disgusted at the way that he's played so far. The second part of this, and this kind of lays into what my phrase was, is what we feared. We've said this is a short side platoon guy. And you hope that maybe he's within shouting distance of being league average against righties. You get me to like 95 WRC plus against righties, then the threat of what he brings against lefties impacts what teams have to do late in the game. So I have no problem with him starting most days. But if he's not somewhere in that neighborhood, then you're going to have to reassess how you're using him. And I think right now, what you said, backing off, is probably the right call. Not run away, not only use him against lefties, but just don't oversaturate the lineup. Don't be afraid to, if it's Noel against the righty too, but if it's the right righty or a guy that maybe he can elevate and hit one over the fence and change things, don't run away from him either. Really, it comes down to a conversation we were having in the Discord the other day where it was like, do you want Freeman or do you want Thomas? And I guess between the two, I would probably take Thomas just because he brings an element against the lefties that he is going to impact how a team changes their pitching later in the game. Freeman doesn't really bring that. He's pretty much even splits on both sides of things. But this was supposed to be someone that helped fortify the offense, helped lift the overall run creation, and he hasn't been that to this point. Let me throw a bonus one in here from Joel. He gave us a super chat of $2. Thank you, Joel. How is Boyd going to look? So give me a one-word association, one word, one phrase for Boyd.
It's hard because I've been skeptical of that signing just because of the way they hyped it up and knowing he's coming off Tommy John surgery. Let me just say, I'll say intrigued. And I don't want to put too much stock into a rehab assignment, though certainly interesting how dominant he was. I mean, he retired the first 17 batters he faced last time out. And he said that was pretty validating. But
I'll even settle for the first 14. Just do that and I'll be okay.
Yeah. The guy's story is interesting. I was talking to him the other day, and he made it clear. He said, quote, "I have my best baseball ahead of me." Now, he's 33 years old coming off Tommy John surgery. So does that mean it's going to happen over the final 6 weeks of the season, or is he thinking ahead to next year and the year after? But it's weird because he had Tommy John surgery and then he was a free agent. So he waited to sign until he was healthy enough to throw for teams. And he said it was so weird because he was home as the season is starting. He's got 4 kids. He's coaching his son's t-ball team and his daughter's softball team, and he's like throwing on the side, and it's April, May, June, and he doesn't have a team. Like, it was weird. He said it was cool. Like, he lives in the Pacific Northwest. He's seeing the trees bloom. Everything's so green. There's rain. And at the same time, he's like, it's awesome to be home with my family, but I'm also not ready for that. And even he threw for the Guardians for the first time at the end of June. And he said 11 days before that, he was throwing a bullpen session at a community college outside of Seattle. And he's got, his dad is holding the TrackMan device. He's got community college hitters standing in. And as he's like, this is crazy because I'm going to be pitching in hopefully in major league games in 6 weeks. And this is where I'm at right now. So to go from there to looking completely dominant against AAA lineups, like, yeah, like, let's not make that out to be more than it is. But I think I'm more intrigued maybe than I would have been if it was just ho-hum the last few weeks. Is that fair?
Yeah. I don't think I would say intrigued. I would just say curious. I'm certainly curious. And part of the curiosity is just, is he going to be better than what you've been getting? Is he better than the Xavier Curry that you let go to Miami? I hope so. Based on the results we saw in the minors, I'll say maybe, but I really don't know what to expect there. All right, next one up. Emmanuel Clase's new offering.
Yeah, I don't know enough about it yet, and I don't know that he's not talking openly about it. He's always talking about.
Give us a little insight on what you learned.
There is talk about him. He's always talked about toying with new pitches, right? I think sinker and changeup have been 2 in the past that I know he's messed around with. I think he's working on implementing something, wants to implement something, has maybe tossed 1 or 2 here and there, but doesn't want to talk about it. I have no proof, and it's difficult, and I know you went on a deep dive on this. It's difficult to tell if he threw anything different. Nothing registered. Like, there's nothing on Baseball Savant suggests he threw anything but his slider or his cutter over the weekend, but you might be able to find evidence that he threw something that doesn't quite fit. I'm not sure what to make of it.
Well, there is one data point, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. There's one data point that we found on Saturday. I didn't find one on Sunday in the game. So maybe it's just all business. Not going to do it. But if he's throwing something different, I will say, and by the way, you didn't give me a word association for this, so what would it be?
Confused.
Confused, okay. There's one pitch. So Clase, picture all of his stuff as he throws it. Everything he throws, whether it's the slider or the cutter, everything moves glove side. Everything. But he had one pitch that came in like a UFO out of nowhere that moved arm side. And not like didn't break horizontally, so it's like a 0. It was like a straight pitch, which that doesn't happen occasionally in his data. Found one pitch that registered. Again, this is just how it registered. I don't know what to make of this, but it moved 10 inches horizontally arm side. So it moved the other way, like a 4-seamer or a sinker, a 2-seamer would move more arm side as opposed to a cutter that is going the other direction towards the glove. Slider moving even more horizontally towards the glove. There's something to keep an eye on there with Clase. So I'll say my word association is zigzag because it's doing the one thing. All the other pitches go this way. If he's implementing something every once in a while, there was one thing that moved the other way.
And it moved at 102 miles an hour. That's the other thing.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that.
Yeah, just monitor.
All right. Next one, Alex Cobb. I'll give you mine first. I thought left hanging. That's my word association here, and a couple of different reasons. One, the defense, which we touched on, But I really think Vogt made a poor decision in leaving him in the game. I know they were trying to stretch him to 85 pitches, but you know he's going to be losing steam. You're right in the middle of a really dangerous Twins lineup. He had a good start to that point. We talk about sometimes you go get a guy before maybe he's ready because you want to make sure the last impression is it was a good start. It was a very good step in the right direction. And I was very encouraged because a lot of what we anticipated, a lot of ground balls, I know there were some seeing eye singles and there was some damage, but for the most part, he was as advertised and the velocity was very much in line with what I had hoped. And then to let him get tagged with a 3-run home run. This is a team that's built on bullpen, right? It just felt like that would have been the great time, the perfect time to make sure first guy gets on, I already got somebody firing. Second guy gets on, after the first guy, I probably would have tried to get some time there, whether it's Carl going to the mound. I would have had somebody ready to go so that you don't get tagged with a 3-run home run. Not saying everything's off of Cobb's plate because got to make sure you don't give up the 3-run home run. But I thought that Vogt kind of left him hanging there and could have been managed a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree. And I did challenge Vogt on that post game. He said he certainly thought about going to Cade Smith in that moment. Obviously waited a batter too late. But just for everybody who was yelling at me Friday night after the game that the reason the team was on a 7-game slide is because the media doesn't ask tough questions. There you go. God, there are so many idiots out there. Anyway.
I'm an idiot.
Yeah, I think there's a way Cobb can work. Jimenez and Rocchio are so good up the middle. And he's a ground ball pitcher. And I think there's a formula there that can work. I didn't really take a ton away from that start. It was his first start back in a long time, 11 months. And you said it. Left in too long, facing a good lineup, probably didn't have his best stuff. All right. Try again Wednesday.
But even if that wasn't his best stuff, that looked good enough to compete to me.
Yeah. That's the big thing for him is it doesn't matter if guys hit the ball hard because usually they're hitting it on the ground. So pound a 95-mile-an-hour sinker or a 88-mile-an-hour splitter into the ground and let that defense go to work.
Did you get a sense of any, whether you want to call it added adrenaline or nervousness? I mean, coming back from injury, finally back in your first big league start, it's not like he's some wide-eyed rookie here in the waiting stages of his career. But still, I would imagine there'd be some juice there that you have to play with that you're not typically having as a veteran pitcher. You've already gotten over that part of your career, but it just sensed like at least a little bit early. Maybe there's a little bit extra amp going on.
It's hard to tell because I don't know him well, and he had no interest in like being reflective after the game. He was very unhappy with how that went. So there was no like, yeah, I was so pumped to be back out there, really proud of how I fought through this the last year. None of that. So I don't know. It's probably worth asking ahead of his second start.
Let's move to the pitcher we just saw on Sunday, got back on the mound himself, Tanner Bibee. Give me your word association for the Bibes. Got the Beebs.
Bulldog.
Got the Bibes.
Bulldog. He never wants to come out of a game. I feel like every single time he starts, he's talking about how he gives the manager a hard time because he wants to just pitch forever. But just impressive to be not feeling physically the way you want to feel for however long he's been dealing with this and gut through a really good outing. When again, him and Williams, it says a lot. They're in their second year. They're young. They're inexperienced. But they rose to the occasion like you would want your best pitchers to do in a time you needed them to do it the most. So very impressive. And the other thing for him and Williams, they'll get the off day. So, Bibee comes back. He was on a bit of a pitch count, but now he gets an extra day to breathe before his next start in Milwaukee.
I thought it was welcome. It was just welcome to see even if he wasn't premium best we've ever seen, Bibee, it's pretty good against a good lineup. Again, I'll keep saying that. And you got 13 swings and misses. It wasn't like nobody was fooled. He's going to have to work his arm back into being where he wants after a little bit of a rest. I think there was a little bit of rust at time for him. You also want to make sure you can trust that your arm, your elbow, your shoulders, everything's working in the way that you want, in velocity, and you're able to go back and get what you need. But the fastball still was able to get some swings and misses. So overall, very encouraged and very welcome to see, because this team ain't going to go nowhere if they don't have Bibee capable of taking the ball in a game one, pitching like we know he's capable. Next, Stephen Kwan.
Smart. How about that play where he fires at the third for the force out? I've never seen that.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You ever seen a 7-5 put out?
not often that I can recall. And he was ready for it. He had to been thinking about it.
And credit to Jose Ramirez, who was also ready for it. Not that I'd ever be surprised by his instincts on a baseball field. But Kwan even said, because he misjudged the ball in the first inning, where he said he took too hard of a step back, and then it fell in front of him. So he made up for it there. And also credit, I mean, I think he's in a little bit of a funk right now at the plate, and he's trying to figure out, whether it's just picking the right pitches to hit, adjusting to pitcher, making adjustments to him after he was hitting 400. And the fact that he can still, go back and look at every home run he's hit this year. Tell me how many of them are on an inside fastball. He loves to turn on those. And that team needed that. Stephen Vogt called it a pressure valve release in the dugout when they took their first lead in what seemed like eons. And they needed to play from in front. And he allowed them to do that a few pitches into the game Saturday.
I'm going to go
12 home runs for him, by the way. He had 11 in his first 2 years combined.
That's truly impressive. And it's why, knowing how big the Saturday home run was, I don't want to kill him too much here, but I do feel like he's been not completely, but to a large extent neutralized. And I mean that he is always a pest. He is a pest. He's a guy that you never want to see come to the plate. Lately, I wouldn't describe him as being a pest offensively. Now, he has had a couple of big home runs. Saturday, as you indicated, maybe the most critical, at least in terms of what we've seen recently. But he's still a guy that since the All-Star break is slashing 239, 302, 364. That's a 666 OPS. We know he's better than that. And that feels like more than just some regression that you would expect for a guy that was hitting close to 400 at one point this year. Overall, the numbers still look good, and we know seasons are not – you don't look at a 320 hitter and say, that guy hits 320 from the minute he wakes up all the way to the end of the season. It's always a 320 clip. No, it's 370 and then 270. It fluctuates. I know that.
He's a chef. What ingredients does he have at that particular moment?
This feels like more than just some average regression. It feels like he needs to make some tangible changes to how he's approaching his offense. And I don't – a guy that's sitting as good as he has for the total part of the season, I'm not saying he's got to overhaul anything or he's got to not think about hitting home runs, but just continue to blend. How do I be the guy I've been with a guy that has the additional power? He was doing that early in the year. Here recently – it's been more of a challenge for him. I want to see him get back to being a little bit more of that pest, because I think this offense, for as good as the well-timed home runs can be, nobody is living and dying with Stephen Kwan home runs. You shouldn't be. And so I want to see him being more of the guy that's just consistently spraying the ball all over the yard, making things difficult for the opposing pitcher, taking pitches, walking, and just being that fly that won't go away.
He's probably going to end the season with about 16, 17 home runs while missing a month.
Yeah.
Like, it is not impossible that Stephen Kwan could have hit 22, 23 home runs this season. Isn't that wild?
Absolutely.
You've been predicting it since he was in AA, but
I mean, I think we had conversations in fairness that we said he can get to more power. He can get to double digits. Like when he first had come up, we had hopes of that. And then we saw the hitter that he was and we thought, maybe not. But, to his credit, in his third year, he's found the power stroke. I don't want it to be at the detriment of what makes him truly a fun, different sort of. Don't be like everybody else. Be this unicorn that Jose Ramirez has become in his career. Lean into what makes you you, and then just pepper in some elements of that power that makes you more of a difficult out and a guy that pitchers have to respect. Next one. This one, I don't know what this is. I don't have a word association for this yet. Maybe you can suggest one for me. Twins, the Minnesota Twins.
I don't know either. They're tough to figure out. I got to spend a lot of time with our buddy Dan Hayes, who knows the Twins inside and out, loves the Twins with all his heart. And I feel like he and those who cover the Twins, and this is not a slam on this because I know it's legitimate, but you can't talk about the Twins without talking about injuries. It's like all they ever write up there. It's year after year. And I get it because Lewis and Correa and Buxton, they're all frequent flyers on the injured list. And now Joe Ryan might not pitch again this season. And they're leaning on Bailey Ober to be like their ace. And they're leaning on Simeon Woods Richardson and David Festa. And so I don't know what they are. It's interesting. Cleveland fans understandably not satisfied with the trade deadline. And yet the Twins, I mean, they're openly out there saying they didn't do anything because they didn't want to spend any money. They were in on Cobb but didn't want to pay $3 million for him. And they need starting pitching, maybe not as badly as Cleveland does, but pretty badly, especially now with Joe Ryan out. So it's a strange team to figure out. Like, they have a lot of nice pieces. The lineup is really good, really deep. The back end of their bullpen's really good. But I don't know what to make of them. And I'm really curious to see. They host the Royals the next 3 days. Curious to watch that series. And then see how this shakes out. Not just where the Guardians wind up, but this division as a whole. The Royals have hung around a lot longer than people thought. And I'll be curious to see if the Twins have the pitching to hold up too. So inconclusive would be my word association.
Yeah, that was the word I was leaning towards. I mean, if you'd asked me 2 days ago, I'd have said dangerous. Division leader, perhaps, at the end of this. But now this was set up for them. And they had taken huge, massive leaps towards cutting into that lead. And they have to feel like, my God, we missed a huge opportunity. And not that three and a half games can eat into that again in another week. It's possible. But they had dreams of more than that. And to take the first 2 games in the series and to be sky high after that, and not only had taken the first 2 games in the series, but the team you're playing in the Guardians, that was their 7th loss in a row. I'm sorry, I keep saying 7. 7th loss in a row for them.
Okay, Monica.
Pounce.
From Friends.
Pounce, you'd feel like you're ready to pounce, but to Cleveland's credit, they fought back. Next one, the Kansas City Royals, and I didn't struggle with this one. I think the Royals are a problem.
Guardians still have 7 games with them, I believe. I think they host them for 4 at the end of the month, and there's a doubleheader in there. And then they go to KC early September, the start of a wild road trip where they go 3 in KC, 3 in LA against the Dodgers, and then 3 in Chicago against the White Sox, who are 28-91. So that goes like difficult and critical to really difficult and strange that you just randomly play the Dodgers in LA in September. And then what should be really easy, but has been really difficult, as the White Sox, like half their wins are against the Guardians this year. But yeah, I'm with you. And again, I'll be glued to Twins Royals this week. Brady Singer, Pablo Lopez in the opener is a really good matchup. And I if you think the Guardians are the best team of the division, and because they've had the division lead for 4 months, that is a fair assessment. I don't know who the second best team is. And I think all three are close. But I don't know if the Twins or Royals are better. I'm not sure.
And when I say a problem,
Like,
I don't
you
even
had to guess how the standings wind up. How would you guess?
Guardians, Royals, Twins.
Okay.
My God, Witt has just been incredible to the point where he has a legitimate case for MVP over Judge, which felt like just out in front, just mail in the ballot today. And now Witt is right there. Yankee fans don't want to admit it, and they'll say, well, just based on the offense, look at home road splits for the Witt. And Bobby Witt's playing as good as anybody in the game right now. 8.1 wins above replacement. Aaron Judge, 8.3. Yikes. Speaking of which, let's talk about Jose Ramirez, and I'll say ever present. And just in terms of American League MVP, that race, well, Jose's probably not going to be a finalist this year, not going to be in the top 3. But again, this dude never goes away. He's consistently, if you look at the Baseball Reference page at the end of his career, it's going to be mind-blowing how many, if you scroll to the far right side of the page, how many MVP finishes where he's in not only in the top 5, but the upper half, and that, or the top 10, the upper half, the top 5 for MVP. And this year, skyrocketing back up the Fangraphs WAR leaderboard, Jose Ramirez has been really good in this. It's even been more than just a stretch. He's currently 6th, tied with Rafael Devers in wins above replacement, but 6th over at Fangraphs. The dude just consistently every year delivers great performances.
I would say low heartbeat. When does he ever look pressured? When does he ever look like the moment is too big? When does he ever look like he does, like, he's always the guy who's like, I got this, right? Delivers the home run on Sunday to tie the game, right? Yeah, I think. You just trust that he's gonna do the right thing at the right time. That's probably the best way I can explain it. And 7-game losing streak or 7-game winning streak, like, he's the guy you want up at the plate. He's the guy you want the ball hit to. Well, I mean, Jimenez is not a bad choice either. But he's just, no matter where he's playing, like, he's always one step ahead. He's going to make the smart decision. Yeah, I look, we talked coming into the season. We wondered when decline would hit. He's going to turn 32 in a month. Not yet.
No.
Hasn't started.
No.
He's putting up one of his best seasons. Just well-rounded. We know about the power. Like, he's going to threaten to be the first player since Travis Hafner in 2006 to wear a Cleveland uniform and hit 40 home runs. Except for those 4 years Franmil Reyes did it in my dreams.
I don't remember Travis stealing also 30 bases, which Jose could also get to.
And efficiently, he's 25 for 28 on stolen bases. He always makes the right play and never ceases to impress.
Just an incredible career. The power, you wonder, a guy like that has to be very optimized because he doesn't have elite exit velocity. We're seeing it in the home run derby, right? He's different than every other hitter in the derby. The swing's got to be on point at all times. The launch angle has to be perfect. He has to be pulling the ball in the air. That's where he gets his power. And so you think, okay, He's past the age of 30. You're going to see the power decline a little bit. Not that that makes him a bad hitter, but he's probably going to have to change because he's not going to be able to just go out, wake up, get out of bed, and hit 30 home runs. And he's already done it. By August 12th, he's already passed the 30 home run barrier for this year. So I run out of words to describe him at times.
Yeah, he's just, the cliche of like, oh, he can impact the game in so many ways. It's like, okay, fine. You're really talking about like a utility player who's not actually good at anything, but can like contribute a little bit here, a little bit there.
He's Lane Thomas.
He's actually excellent at everything.
Yeah, excellent at everything. Even if Eric Karros is disturbed by that. Final thing, Will Brennan. And I included him. Think about this for a second. I included him because we talked about we want to see Manzardo, we want to see Brito, we want to see Valera. Brennan was the guy that they called up. And hey, been pretty good since they got his bat back up here.
Fine. Better than nothing. But not the answer. Like I'd rather see him in the lineup against right-handed pitching than I guess Lane Thomas on some days or
Yeah.
Tyler Freeman or
Yeah, definitely. Probably more than Freeman.
but I just don't he hasn't been consistent enough. His OPS plus is 90. On base percentage is below 300. He's missing an element. If he hit for a little more power, if he drew some more walks, if he stole some more bases even, then you could probably live with him as the strong side platoon, but I still like him to hit a little bit better. We see streaks. I don't know. He was 0 for 20, and then he comes up and he looks great.
Just ripping the cover off the ball, ruining a lot of AAA kids' dreams down in the minor leagues when he got sent back down there.
Have him and Manzardo.
Yes.
They can exist on the same roster.
That they absolutely
I don't know if
could.
he and Valera can.
Valera's more of
his
a
lineup
curiosity,
still
though.
is imperfect.
Like Valera's not screaming, "Get him up here." It's more of a, well, I'm gonna make an option determination on him coming up, and now's as good a time as any.
He has crushed righties this year. I don't know. It's an imperfect situation. There are still more potential solutions to explore.
I came up with two words. One has a positive light on it, and one has a negative. The negative one, I would say, is a tease. Kind of alluding to what you said, is that he will do just enough that you think, okay, I don't want to run away from him yet. And then he struggles. And then he catches fire. And then he struggles. And it's doing just enough to do what the positive light would be, surviving. This guy just keeps surviving. Just when you think, he's not a guy that's going to help this roster. He finds a way to help the roster, even for a series. And there were times where it looked like his bat was the only one that was awake in this series. And coming up with another big hit on Sunday. So I want to give him chances, but at the same time, I want to see other people. And it's a battle I constantly fight with him.
You sound like a disgruntled boyfriend.
A little bit. Maybe a little bit. I want to give shouts out to Corey, who says, should Noel play more with Thomas struggles, or do you like Brennan more? Who would you like to see more, Brennan or Noel? I know some of it's pitcher dependent, but let's just say an average righty on the mound.
Probably Brennan. I don't feel strongly in that. Tough thing with Noel is he hadn't played for a little while, and then he got in there on Friday night, was it? 3 at-bats, 5 pitches.
Yeah, that's
3 pop-outs or flyouts, all sliders. So on one hand, he's probably like, I finally get to play. Like, I got to be aggressive. I haven't seen a live pitching in days. On the other hand, that lack of patience is tough.
Final thing came in. By the way, the Chippa was here earlier. Shout out to the Discord again. Go join patreon.com/Zack Selby is Godcaster. We'll be back later this
Your
week to
number one
recap
fan.
this this Cubs series. Robert says, can't trust Sandlin anymore. Are we to a point where they got to make some changes in the in the rotation coming up with Boyd? Could Sandlin be a guy that gets optioned? Do they trust?
Yeah, I don't know. Him or Strzelecki? Yeah, I think they need to just find him low leverage opportunities, which there haven't been a ton of, unless they're, the lowest leverage they've had recently is down 4-2 in the 5th inning. But they need to find those chances for him now to get back on track. 6 home runs allowed in his last 13 and 2/3 innings. Can't have
kind of settling into between him and Barlow fighting over the Brian Shaw role in fans' minds, unfortunately. Well, thank you for hanging out with us today. The fun surprise live stream. We appreciate you being here with us. And of course, if you didn't catch any of this or all of this, you can catch the full replay at YouTube. And if this will be over in all the Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the usual places. Thank you for hanging out with us. And later this week, we'll be back at patreon.com/Selby is Godcast. You ready to return home for like 5 seconds?
2016 World Series rematch.
Yeah.
Jordan Bastian on the other side now. Will the Cleveland get revenge?
Cross enemy lines. Thanks for hanging out with us, everybody. We'll see you.